They hid this story from you for centuries. In monasteries carved into the mountains of Ethiopia, hidden in ancient manuscripts written in Ge'ez, a language long forgotten by time, lies a portrait of Jesus the Western world never told. A black Jesus, an African Jesus, a Jesus whose missing years from the traditional Bible may not have been silent at all, but filled with purpose, wisdom, and suffering. What is hidden in the Ethiopian scriptures could shake the very foundations of faith, not to destroy it, but to rekindle it with truth, with humanity, with a lost connection to the deepest roots of Christian belief. When we speak of the Jesus in the Ethiopian scriptures, we are not inventing a new story. We are uncovering an ancient one, still alive through hidden scrolls, passed down by generations of monks who never bowed to the Roman Empire, to the Church of Constantine, or to the interests of medieval Europe. To them, Jesus was never distant, never whitewashed, never untouchable. Jesus was a brother, a child of the land, a spirit who walked among them. He was a man with dark skin, with eyes that knew the pain of a people marked by struggle and living faith. If this story has touched you already, like this video now and help spread this forgotten truth. The Ethiopian Bible, more extensive than any other version in the Christian world, includes books you may have never heard of. The Book of Enoch, Jubilees, the Shepherd of Hermas. They show a Messiah connected to African roots, a Jesus who not only visited Egypt as a child to escape death in Israel, but who may have stayed on African soil for years absorbing wisdom from ancient priests and teachers. The biblical silence about the years between Jesus' 12th and 30th birthdays has always intrigued scholars. What did he do? Where was he? Why do Western scriptures ignore such a vital part of the Savior's life? Ethiopia, one of the oldest Christian nations on earth, never needed Vatican approval to claim its faith. Ethiopian tradition says Jesus not only walked on African soil but found there his earliest echoes of mission. The monks from the mountains of Lalibela speak of visions, of records of healings, of teachings he left behind in caves and villages forgotten by modern maps. This is not fantasy. It is a part of Christian history that was silenced for centuries, maybe because it did not fit the European mold of an idealized Jesus. Can you imagine what it means for millions of people of African descent around the world to learn that Jesus may have looked more like them than the Renaissance paintings hanging in churches? That the color of his skin was never an irrelevant detail, but a bridge to restore the dignity of people who have suffered for so long under the violence of racism disguised as faith? This revelation does not change the heart of the gospel, it restores it. If this truth means something to you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Your voice matters. One of the most impactful manuscripts speaks of a journey Jesus may have taken along the banks of the Blue Nile, where he experienced a kind of spiritual initiation. There, in silence, in prayer, he is said to have learned the wisdom of the ancients and deeply understood the weight of human suffering. It was there, according to the text, that he heard the voices of those who suffer, the poor, the forgotten. This experience, the monks say, shaped the kind of Messiah he would become. Not an armed liberator, but a suffering servant. Not a king with a golden crown, but a shepherd who washed the feet of his disciples. This image of Jesus as a black man, with an African soul and a universal mission, does not erase what we already know about him. On the contrary, it adds depth to his compassion, meaning to his humility, and context to his struggle against the powerful. He knew oppression not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. He knew the hot sweat of dark skin under the desert sun. He knew the contempt of empires that mocked the faith of the simple. He knew the language of those who cry without being heard. This changes everything, and if you are listening with an open heart, share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth. There are many who are seeking a real Jesus, not a symbol sculpted for historical convenience. There are many who need to see that their color, their origin, their story is also part of salvation. The Ethiopian Bible also reveals how the African people from the most ancient times were touched by the Spirit of God. Remember the Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts, who was baptized by Philip. Ethiopia was already fertile soil for the gospel long before Rome's conversion. This shows us that God's plan was always bigger than any religious structure created afterward. God has always looked at hearts, not maps. As we look at these scriptures, this is not about confronting traditions. It is about restoring what was erased. It is about bringing back a fundamental part of Christian identity that was silenced by pride, racism, or simple ignorance. There is no true faith without truth. And truth needs courage to be spoken. Do you have that courage? Then subscribe to this channel right now and join us in this journey of spiritual rediscovery. Maybe you are feeling something different now, a discomfort, an excitement, a mix of both. That is normal. When the truth appears after being hidden for so long, it shakes foundations, but it also heals. It heals the mind, the heart, the soul. Knowing that Jesus was not just a symbol molded by European artists but a real man with deep roots in African lands can restore the faith of many who felt excluded for too long. Imagine the children who grew up without seeing anyone like them in the sacred stories. Imagine what changes when they learn that the Savior of the world may have looked like their parents, their uncles, themselves. That is powerful. That is transformation. And that is why we are here, not just telling a story but reviving a hope. Christian faith is richer, deeper, and more beautiful than we were taught, and the Ethiopian Bible is one of the greatest proofs of that. It invites us to reopen our eyes, to listen to the voices of the past that were silenced, to find Jesus where we may have never looked, in forgotten villages, in silent mountains, in ancient pages written by hands that loved truth more than power. Right now, there are monks praying in caves, keeping this heritage alive. There are scholars risking their lives to translate these texts. And here you are now standing before this revelation. What will you do with it? Will you close your eyes? Or will you let the light in? If this message has touched your heart, like this video now, your support helps us continue uncovering stories that deserve to be known. Jesus is greater than any portrait, greater than any tradition, greater than any lie told in his name. He is the Son of the living God, incarnated in true humanity. And part of that humanity, yes, was black, was African, was forgotten, but not anymore. The time has come to remember, to restore, to reconnect. Share this message with someone who needs to know that the Savior also bore in his body the color of people who were always left aside. Subscribe to the channel and walk with us on this search for a more honest, stronger, and freer faith. Because the truth, when it is finally revealed, changes everything. And the Jesus many never wanted to show is exactly the Jesus the world needs to know.